Round the World Lit Audio. Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. Episode 4. The Sun, Govinda. The final episode, full narration script. Channel intro. Welcome to Around the World Lit Audio, the greatest novels ever written, from every corner of the world, in English. New chapter every week. Free to listen. Chapter recap. In episode 3, Siddhartha arrived at the river with nothing and listened, and heard not as a concept but as a sound. He found Vasudeva the ferryman, who had been sitting at the river long enough to know how to be fully present in one place. He became a ferryman. He learned from the river that time is not linear, that all voices are in the river's voice, that every version of Siddhartha was always the same Siddhartha. Then Kamala came on pilgrimage with a boy of 10 years. A snake bit her. She died in the evening, telling Siddhartha, "The boy is yours." He looked at the boy, proud and spoiled and beautiful and alone, and thought, "I am beginning again." Episode 4. The Sun, and Govinda. The final episode. The Sun. The boy did not want to be there. This was the first and most important fact about young Siddhartha. He had been raised in comfort and privilege, in a city house with servants and fine things, by a mother who had given him everything except what he most needed, which was the experience of not getting everything. He had grown up beautiful and capable and entirely certain that the world was organized for his convenience, and the river and the ferryman's hut, and the simple food and the hard work of the crossing were not what he considered the world owed him. He was also grieving. His mother had died. He was 10 years old and his mother had died on a pilgrimage, and he was now living with a man he did not know, a man who said he was his father, which he could not verify, and was not certain he wished to believe, in a place that was nothing like the place he had come from. He was angry. He expressed his anger in the way of children who have been raised to believe their feelings are the most important thing in the room, loudly, consistently, without any particular concern for whether his anger was convenient for the people around him. He complained. He refused to work. He was rude to Vasudeva. He was rude to Siddhartha. He found the food inadequate and the sleeping arrangements offensive and the river boring, and the whole arrangement an imposition. Siddhartha loved him. He loved him with the specific love of a parent who has arrived at parenthood late, and is therefore perhaps more aware than the average parent of what it is, the love that is not contingent on the child's behavior, that does not diminish in proportion to the difficulty the child presents. That is simply there, a fact, like the river. He did not understand the river yet, but the love was the same kind of thing. He tried to be a father. He tried with the specific earnestness of someone who has never been a father, and is attempting to learn it from first principles, who has read nothing on the subject, and has no model to follow except his own father, which is not the model he wants to use. He was patient with the boy's anger. He was present for the boy's grief even when the grief expressed itself as hostility. He found the balance between letting the boy feel what he felt and asking him to participate in the life of the river. It did not work. Vasudeva watched. He watched with the expression of someone who knows how this goes, who has seen this before. Not this specific situation but this specific quality of situation, the quality of a person who has learned something profound and is discovering that what they have learned cannot be transmitted directly to someone who has not lived their way to it. He said, one evening, "You are suffering." Siddhartha said, "Yes." He said, "You are suffering because you love him, and he is not happy and you cannot make him happy." Siddhartha said, "Yes." He said, "You know this feeling. You caused this feeling in your own father once. You left him and he wept." Siddhartha was very still. He said, "I know." Vasudeva said, "The river knows about this too. You can hear it if you listen." The boy ran away. He waited until a night when the crossing was busy, and Siddhartha and Vasudeva were occupied with passengers, and he took what he wanted from the hut, some food, some money that had accumulated from the ferry's earnings, and left. He went back toward the city. He went back toward what he knew. Siddhartha found the boy gone in the morning. He went after him. He followed the path toward the city, walking quickly with the specific quality of a parent chasing a child, the mixture of fear and love and the specific helplessness of someone who knows, on some level, that they cannot catch what is running from them. He reached the edge of the city. He could see the boy ahead, smaller now in the distance, already absorbed into the outskirts of the city, already returning to the world he understood. He stopped. He stood at the edge of the city, and understood what Vasudeva had understood, what the river had been trying to tell him, what the love of the sun had been there to teach, that you cannot keep what wants to leave, that the love that tries to hold on becomes the thing that hurts, that his father had felt this standing somewhere behind him, as Siddhartha walked away all those years ago, and that this specific pain was not a mistake but a teaching, and that the teaching was, let go. He turned around. He went back to the river. He wept at the river, wept the way he had wept when he first arrived, with the completeness of someone whose defenses are fully down, except that this weeping was different from the first weeping because it was about love rather than about loss, and love was a better thing to weep about. The river said Vasudeva sat with him. He sat in the specific way he sat at everything, fully present, not performing presence. Simply there. He listened to Siddhartha's weeping without trying to stop it, or redirect it or explain it, and when the weeping had run its course he said very little. He said, "You have suffered enough from this. The river has more to tell you. Listen." Siddhartha listened. He had been listening to the river for years, had learned from it the things he described to Govinda much later, the things about time and simultaneity and the unity of all experience. But this listening was different. This was listening with the whole of what he was, with the son's grief and the father's love, and the ferryman's years and the merchant's experience, and the ascetic's discipline and the Brahmin's learning and everything that had ever been Siddhartha, all of it present and listening. The river spoke, not in words. The river did not speak in words. The river spoke in and contained everything, every voice of joy and suffering that had ever been, every laughter and lamentation, and all of them together made a sound that was not pain, and not happiness but something that contained both and exceeded both. He understood. The understanding was not a thought. It was not something he arrived at through reasoning or argument or the application of intelligence to a problem. It was more like the understanding of a man who has been standing in a room for a long time, and has been gradually realizing that the room is larger than he thought, and the realization is simply there, complete, without requiring the work of arrival. Time was not linear. Siddhartha the boy and Siddhartha the ascetic, and Siddhartha the merchant and Siddhartha the ferryman, and Siddhartha the father were not different people in sequence. They were all Siddhartha, present simultaneously, and the river saw all of them at once, the way the river sees all the water that has ever been in it, and all the water that will ever be in it, and all the water that is in it now is the same river, the same water, the same There was no past self to recover and no future self to achieve. There was only this, being fully what you are in the moment of being it, without the overlay of where you came from or where you are going. He was what he was. He looked at Vasudeva. Vasudeva was smiling, the specific smile of someone who has been waiting for something to happen and has just seen it happen. He said, "I have been waiting for this." Siddhartha said, "You knew." He said, "I heard it in your breathing. I saw it in your face. The river told me it was coming." He said, "I have been here long enough. Now I can go." Vasudeva stood. He walked to the river, not to the boat, not to the crossing, but to the river itself. He stood at its edge. And then, in the way that the novel does not explain because explanation is not appropriate, he disappeared into the river, became part of it, was gone in the way that things go when they have arrived at their complete form, and have nothing further to do. Siddhartha was alone at the river. He was the ferryman now. He had always been becoming the ferryman. Govinda. Years passed. Siddhartha became old at the river, not old in the way of Vasudeva, who had been timeless, but old in the way of a man who has worked outdoors for many years, and whose body shows the work and the weather. Old in the way of someone for whom age has been a process of becoming more fully himself rather than less. Then Govinda came. Govinda had become a monk, had stayed with the Buddha's community after the parting at Jetavana, had followed the path, had observed the disciplines, had been for decades a good monk, genuinely devoted, genuinely practicing. He was old. He was still devoted. He was also, Siddhartha could see immediately, still looking. The search was still in him. He did not recognize Siddhartha at first. He saw an old ferryman and asked to be taken across. Siddhartha took him across. On the far bank Govinda looked at the ferryman's face and recognized him. He said, "Siddhartha." He said, "You are Siddhartha. You look so peaceful." He said, "I have practiced for 50 years, and I am not certain I have found what you seem to have found. Tell me, what did you find? What do you know that I don't know?" Siddhartha said, "Nothing. I know nothing that you don't know. We have the same knowledge and the same teachings. We have read the same books and heard the same words." Govinda said, "But you are different. You have something. What is it?" Siddhartha thought for a long time. He said, "I have found that wisdom cannot be transmitted. That is the one thing I have found that seems worth saying. The Buddha could not transmit his enlightenment, he could only share the path he walked. And the path is not the arrival. I walked away from the Buddha's path, and found my own and arrived at my own place. And if I tried to tell you what I found you would hear words, and not the thing the words are pointing at." He said, "I will tell you one thing, that may help you. Love is the most important thing. Not the love that wants to hold, not the love that wants to possess, the love that simply loves, without conditions, without requiring return, without needing the loved thing to be different from what it is. The stone in the river is a stone and eventually becomes the river, and the river is the stone. Everything is everything, at a level deep enough. And the love that can see this and love it is the love that the Buddha called compassion, and that the river calls Govinda listened. He said, "May I touch your forehead?" As a blessing. He touched Siddhartha's forehead. And in the touch, in that specific physical contact between the two old friends, who had parted at Jetavana 50 years before and had each walked their own path, Govinda saw everything. He saw Siddhartha's face, and in the face he saw all faces, the face of the boy and the ascetic and the merchant and the ferryman, and the father and the old man, and behind all of them the face of the river, and behind the river the face of everything, and it was all the same face, and the face was smiling, and the smile was the He wept, he bowed, he left. Siddhartha remained at the river moved. Series close. You have reached the end of Siddhartha, by Hermann Hesse, published in Germany in 1922. Written after a period of personal crisis, that Hesse described as a descent into the unconscious, a period of depression and the dissolution of his first marriage, and the beginning of the psychoanalysis that would lead him, eventually, to the equanimity that Siddhartha embodies. He wrote it in the year he turned 45. It is a young man's story written by a middle-aged man who had lost the young man's certainty, and was looking for something quieter and more durable. What Hesse argued is this: wisdom cannot be transmitted. The Buddha's path was the Buddha's path, and it cannot be walked by anyone else in the same way. The only path that leads to the real destination is your own path, the specific, personal, sometimes catastrophic journey that your particular life presents you with. You must go through the city to get to the river. You must love and lose and suffer, and become the childlike people and find the river at the bottom of all of it. The river has always been there. Has always been speaking. The difficulty is learning to hear it. Thank you for listening to Siddhartha on Around the World Lit Audio. Subscribe so you never miss a chapter. A new episode arrives every week.